Hey there, folks. Haven't said that in a while. But since I've been doing this whole, look back at the last 10 years of content thing, I wanted to kind of revisit the idea from my first official video about the need for a new 3D Donkey Kong game. Which is a fitting topic since we're actually getting that now. But anyway, looking back at that video got me thinking about some other games that have been kind of lost to time and could use another shot. But in this case, I'm thinking more about, reimagining or creatively remaking games rather than a new entry in a series. And I was going to write out a whole script, but I didn't feel like it, so I just wrote a few notes down instead. You know, fuck it, we'll do it live. But heavily edited, because I ramble. My son, don't feel downhearted, you can pick up where you started, with the knowledge not to fail that way again. Zero score is not an end, but instead where you begin, to figure out where you went wrong back then. So just hit reset and try again to win. The first idea I had was for a remake of Golden Sun 1 and 2. We don't need to worry about Dark Dawn because no one else cares about that game, so why should I? But my idea is to take these two separate Game Boy Advance games and package them together like they're doing with Dragon Quest 1 and 2. They originally said that Golden Sun 1 and 2 were intended to be one game, but the idea they had was too big for the Game Boy Advance cartridge, so they had to split them up. So I would love to see them combined again, but still, separately in a game select menu. And you can start with either game, but then you transfer the completed game data to the second game. Kind of like how the Zelda Oracle games did it, where the second game you play, after you put in a password, which this wouldn't use passwords because that's dated, but those used passwords, and then the second game brought over some of your the names and events and things like that you did in the first game, and referenced those events as if the worlds were kind of connected together. And there was also a new ending to the second game, that kind of stuff. Added content, but also the world itself was changed based on the things you did in the first game. So yeah, in this case, for example, if you want the traditional retro experience, you can start with Golden Sun and then go into the Lost Age, just like it worked in the original games, where, your character data, your levels, and I think your number of Djinn and things like that, transferred over into the second game. But if you want to see the story from a new perspective, you could start with Lost Age, with, that set of characters from the beginning, and see how taking that data into the first Golden Sun reframes the events of the first game. Light spoilers here if you haven't played these, 25-year-old games. I'm just giving a second for people to click away if they haven't yet. The idea is that in Golden Sun, the kind of main villains are actually the playable party in the Lost Age. And so each game is the different sides of the conflict. And in the first game, you don't get any of that context. And so you just think, oh, they're the bad guys. When I find that concept fascinating from a gameplay standpoint. And I'd love to see what they could do to kind of reframe the story based on how you play and add a lot more context to that than, the very linear, this only works one way. It's still a mind blow in Lost Age when you're oh, these guys actually aren't bad. They're just opposing forces, essentially. They each are on the right side, just against each other. But I think they could do a little bit more with that. And I don't know exactly how it would work, but I'm not the game developer. I'm just an idea person on the internet. As far as the art style and everything, I would love to see that, HD 2D style of the Dragon Quest remakes. I definitely do not want it to look like Dark Dawn does on the DS, because that game is kind of ugly and goes against everything that the first two games established as really cool and unique looking GBA games that somehow still hold up. But I also wouldn't be opposed to something kind of almost like the Zelda dioramas. That kind of more cutesy top-down styled, very expressive. Golden Sun's known for all the expressions, the little kind of emotes over the heads of the characters. So if they could find a way to kind of visualize that a little bit better without just like thought bubbles above their heads, I think that could play into the art style in a really cool way. On the note of the diorama art style type thing, my next game idea is Earthbound. Like the whole trilogy of Earthbound games. Because yes, there's 3 of them. This would be another compilation package with all 3 games. You know, you can pick each one from the menu. But these would be more faithful remakes. I'm not thinking of any like kind of reinventing the wheel thing, just because like a lot of people haven't played them in the first place. So you can get a lot of mileage out of just faithful remakes. The only thing is the problematic elements that have kind of kept the games from being released, specifically Mother 3, would be edited or removed so that we can actually get them over here. Because, yeah, as it stands, we're never going to get the originals outside of like the fan translations. But I will say the fan translation of Mother 3 is great. And, you know, if you have a GBA ROM, not hint, hint, you know, I'm not gonna say anything, but they exist. That is a great way to play that game. But my thought is, you know, the originals exist. You don't have to, like, do them one for one. But if we can at least get the story and the main elements out there. I'm not a huge Earthbound guy, so I don't know exactly what all is problematic. I don't know how hard it would be to translate those things basically in a releasable way. I just want to see these games actually come out, and I know that would require a remake. They aren't just going to put out the originals on like the Nintendo Online or anything. And for these, I'm also kind of thinking that like diorama style, or maybe like a claymation, something that looks kind of like heightened and maybe a little fake, but with a unique charm that fits the concept art of a lot of the characters that you'd find like in the instruction manual and online and things like that. It would be modeled after how the canceled Earthbound 64 game is going to look. 3D and kind of chunky, but cute and expressive also. That's why I'm kind of thinking claymation, like a stop motion, like Wallace and Gromit type thing, but you know, as a video game, of course. I think that would really pop in the battle scenes, more so than, you know, the original art style, just like up-resed or, you know, a simplistic Undertale type thing. I want to see these games modernized so that people that aren't Earthbound fans are still interested, rather than just, oh, this looks how I remember, I'm going to play. Because like there's not enough Earthbound fans, I don't think, to sell the games on their own. You need to bring in new fans, and to do that, unfortunately, you need to, you know, modify some things. But otherwise, yeah, just faithful remakes. I don't have a lot on this one, because like I said, I'm not a huge Earthbound fan, but I want to be. Another thing I want to be a big fan of, I just haven't had the opportunity, is Legend of Dragoon. This game is actually the one that inspired this video, because I was thinking about how excited I am for the new game Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which is the worst title for what should be the best game. It got me thinking about how a Legend of Dragoon remake with a similar battle system would be amazing. So for those that don't know, the Clair Obscur battle system is turn-based, but it also has a full like reaction, time-based combo type system. You can block and parry enemy attacks, and also do like timed button presses on screen to do more complicated attack combos, attack strings. And Legend of Dragoon, for people that haven't played it, because let's be honest, a lot of people haven't, has a very similar but simplified version of that, where when you attack, these prompts show up on screen, and if you manage to hit the box in time, you'll continue your combo up to however many times you've equipped. You get like more powerful abilities that require more button presses as you go. And enemies can also kind of, I guess, parry that, and so you have to riposte, is that the word? Parry and riposte their attacks in the middle of your combo in order to keep going. It's a very like revolutionary system for, you know, a PS1 RPG, and that game has been essentially lost to time. There's been a few examples, like it was released on the PlayStation Virtual Console, whatever it's called. Like, I think it's currently on like the PlayStation Plus catalog. And there's been a few representations. There's a bot of him, an Astrobot of the main character. That's pretty cool. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, the game has been lost to time. Despite being a Sony first-party developed game, way ahead of its time, not just from the battle system, but also voiced cutscenes, which was unheard of for RPGs at the time. Think about like, the Final Fantasy games on PS1. None of those had voice acting.
Is this really necessary?
It is His Majesty, Emperor Dole's command to take that girl into custody.
Who is she?
That is not your concern.
Anyway, point is, that game was dope, and since it's a first-party title, Sony should hire the studio that's doing Clear Obscure, which is their first game and will get them a lot of publicity, to do something with Legend of Dragoon. Even if it's not like a, super faithful remake and more of like a broad reimagining like Final Fantasy VII Remake was. I still want it to be that kind of turn-based action system. Again, like, that's why I want the Clear Obscure team to do it, because they could use like that existing engine and modify the battle system. But yeah, they could do a lot with that game, I think. That studio specifically. And, I mean, the themes and like visuals and everything in there are so amazing, even for the PS1. I can't imagine what it would look like in, today's industry. It would basically be a whole new game that I think would really blow up. Really, the only thing holding it back now is that the graphics look a little dated. It's still one of the best looking PS1 games, but it's got that, pre-rendered backgrounds with like polygonal 3D characters that kind of have smushy face. It's got that syndrome that doesn't necessarily upscale well. Again, there's great like fan graphics mods out there that make the game look amazing, but they're all still a little like AI upscale-y, kind of smeared in a way that doesn't necessarily scale super well. I'll still play it because it's the only way I can, but I would prefer a remake, and I think that team would be the one to do it. Also, play Clear Obscure. It comes out April 24th. I can't wait. You should play it too. It's got friggin' Daredevil in it. I don't have a logical transition because, again, I'm just rambling and didn't like set myself up. But the next game is Mario Land 2. Just so this list isn't all RPGs, I just want to throw in here that I will take literally anything with Mario Land 2. This is probably the best Mario game that's just been lost to time, and it's a crime that the only modern way to play it is emulated with the brilliantly done fan-made colorization patch, which, at least fans have kept the love alive because that patch is amazing. There's a lot of great Game Boy Color patches out there, actually, which all put the Nintendo Online app to shame. And for those that don't know what Mario Land 2 is, it was actually the second Game Boy Mario game. Mario Land 1 is fine. I mean, it's really not worth talking about. But Mario Land 2 went a long way. Like, it still looks amazing for a Game Boy game. The level of detail on the sprites, the creative level design. It's also, I believe, the first introduction of Wario. He's the main villain in that game, and then Mario Land 3 was actually Wario Land. They kind of did like a Yoshi's Island situation where it was like that was, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Mario Land 3 is Wario Land. But yeah, Mario Land 2 is great for a lot of reasons. And currently, there's no Mario platformer tied to the reveal of the Switch 2, which is like a first for a Nintendo console, I'm pretty sure. So now seems like the perfect time to bring back Mario's forgotten Game Boy entry, and I would recommend doing it in the Mario Wonder engine, since it's just as weird and experimental as that game. Going back to like what the game is, there's worlds with like horror themes, and even one inside a giant toy Mario, which is actually one of my favorite Mario worlds of all time. I have a video about that if you're curious, but I would have made that entire video about Mario Land 2 worlds, honestly. I locked myself to one world per game, so I couldn't. But I'm going to move on because I don't want to spend forever on this game, but I did just kind of want an excuse to gush about Mario Land 2 again. And I really do think that it would look amazing with the expressive, lively art style and animation quality of Mario Wonder. And last but not least, I know we're getting a new 3D Donkey Kong game, and it looks like a lot of fun, but I would still love a proper Donkey Kong 64 remake. There's a mod for the N64 ROM called Tag Anywhere, and that goes a long way in cutting down the tedium of managing the 5 different Kongs throughout each level, where you can basically hit a button to swap whichever ones you have at the moment. That feature alone proves there's ways to modernize the game while still maintaining what makes it special. And sure, it would probably need some, other creative liberties done to make it more accessible to modern audiences, but I also think it would be worth reintroducing that game to modern audiences. There's a lot to like, and we are kind of in a, 3D collectathon renaissance right now. I mean, they're remaking Ukulele, and that original game was arguably worse than Donkey Kong 64 is. So if it can come back out and get critical acclaim, I assume, why can't we get Donkey Kong 64 again? Of course, it wouldn't be called that. It would be like, I can't think of a banana pun other than Bonanza, and that one's used. It's so good. I'm lost on anything else. Donkey Kong 5 Kongs in a barrel. Donkey Kong monkeying around. Donkey Kong's big old dong. I don't know. I did still successfully manage my yearly obligation to include Donkey Kong 64 in a video, so I'm just going to end it here. I don't have to come up with a name. Come back next time for... I don't even know yet. I made this video on a whim, despite having a whole schedule of 10-year anniversary videos, so I haven't decided what I'm going to do next. But go watch my 10 years of Zero Score video if you haven't yet. Everyone loves a good clip show, and some good friends had great stories to share in there, so it's not all old clips. Plus, who's actually watched, all of my videos? I'm sure there's bound to be something in there you haven't seen. Go check it out. Also, let me know what games you would like to see a remake or reimagining of. I know there's an endless number and a ton of ideas out there, some of which we've been getting recently. So I just think this is a fun, jumping off point for discussion. So let's discuss in the comments below. Until next time.